Hey guys, welcome back. So I am driving and I'm going to answer my questions that I got from the other day. I only got two. I got one from Don Carmichael and Stephen Richter, and thank you guys for writing some questions. Stephen's question I think overlaps with one of Don's questions, so I'll just answer them all at the same time, and I think that'll keep us sane and keep this video from getting too out of control. So Don asked what my experiences were with 3D printing. So I guess I'm just going to give a roundup of how I got started and everything. I think in 2011 or 2012, I got my first 3D prints done through Shapeways. Now, I was modeling parts in 2011 because I needed stuff for C3PO that nobody else offered. There were people that were making these really nice metal parts out of brass, but they were inaccurate. And then there were people that were making resin parts, but the fidelity was really bad on them. They were, odd sizes and also not accurate. So I needed to make my own parts. And I was given some really good reference photos to work off of. So I started modeling everything and figured I could just get them printed someplace. This is before, I knew a lot about 3D printing. So I started modeling things and I got some pieces done. I called around in Tampa where I live to see if there were places that 3D printed. And I found a few, but they were very, very expensive to get parts done. Just way outside of the range that I had considered. So I put that on back burner for a little bit, and then a friend of mine, I was having this conversation with him, he said, oh, you should try Shapeways, which this is, again, like end of 2011, probably early 2012. So I uploaded a model to give it a shot, and they printed my part. Prices were way, way, way better than the local places in Tampa. So they printed the part for me, and the rest is history. I've been printing ever since. Now, I didn't get my own printer until almost exactly a year ago. I got my printer set up at the house. So that's relatively new, a year old. I've been printing. If you look in my videos where I'm at my printer, you can see stacks of spools. I've gone through so much printer filament. I've done lots and lots of prints with it since I got it. I've run it as much as possible. And it's been great. But the prints I do at home and the prints I do through Shapeways are kind of different as far as the quality, and even the way the models are set up is just sort of different. Shapeways, they have multiple materials and some different printing options, but I usually get the White Strong Flexible, which is done using an SLS printing method, which is what does it mean? Selective laser sintering, I believe is what that stands for. Sintering, S-I-N-T-E-R-I-N-G. And basically what it does is it takes a laser and it heats up a powder until it melts. And you can do this with metal or different plastics. And sorry, I gotta get over this dude is riding in my blind spot. And it makes really, really good, really clean parts. And Shapeways parts are very strong. It's like I said, it's like a nylon material, so they're really, really sturdy. The detail is good, and the price is great. And one good thing about doing SLS printing is you don't need support materials, so you can do some really unique shapes that are very difficult to do even on a home printer. You can make cool hollow areas inside prints and internal structures that even on an extrusion-based printer like what I've got at home, you can't do it without a bunch of support material. It's a huge pain in the butt. So I really still like Shapeways for a lot of my models. I guess that's my basic experience. I've been doing 3D modeling for years before I started printing. So when the idea of 3D printing came up, it was kind of a no-brainer. I can already, make the parts in 3D space. So that wasn't an issue. It's just more like finding out how to get started printing and, get that going. That was kind of the tricky bit for me. And that kind of, I guess, leads into the next question that was asked both by Don and Steven, which is what software do I use to print? And other software, I guess, for slicing and like slicing up the files, which I use a couple different programs for that. My main program that I use for modeling is 3D Studio Max, which is it's great for doing 3D artwork in virtual space, CG work. It's okay for 3D printing. It gets the job done. It's not, I wouldn't recommend it for using if you're just focused on 3D printing. That's not really the software I'd probably get. If you need, like for free software, I would say the best one I've seen so far is 123D Design. It handles some of the tasks really well, like doing chamfered edges and boolean tasks where you take one object and subtract that shape from another object. It just does a fantastic job with those kind of functions, where even better than 3D Studio Max, which costs a ton of money. And then you have this program 123D Design that's free, and it does those things beautifully. And I really like that. It exports good files too. I mean, in my opinion, for a free program, you can't beat it. Another program people like is SketchUp. I'm not a big fan of SketchUp's 3D models as far as the way they're exported. They don't really do it for me. I think they're kind of lame. They're okay. They get by. I know a lot of people that use it and it works all right. Another program that I've been looking into recently that I want to get for myself is Fusion 360. The modeling tools look to be similar to 123D Design, but it's just a more robust program. It's a paid program. However, I think that there's ways to get a free version of it if you're a student or you're I've seen people that use it for free. I don't know how they do it. It's not a cheat. It's like a legitimate version. They don't have to break any laws or anything. But Fusion 360 is really good. You can export files that you can use for machining and stuff as well from that program, which is very nice. For me, I like to make a lot of things, and I'm not just going to 3D print. That's really good. So those programs are good for making a lot of technical pieces and I don't know, like technical models where it needs to be everything's clean and precise. If you want to do organic models, I would say just get ZBrush. There are some other 3D sculpting programs out there that are okay, but ZBrush is just so good, and there's plugins that are specifically made to help export models for 3D printing, and they're awesome. Those are the files I'd say, the programs I'd say if you're going to model things. Those are probably the biggest go-tos. Maya works fine if you're a Maya user. That's a decent one. Now, if you want to do crossover, like the work that I do, where I do a lot of 3D rendering and so like CG work, 3D Studio Max is just a good blend because I can do both. But like I said, it's not the best for 3D printing. With the files, as far as slicing my files and setting them up for printing, I use a program called NetFab to double check my files before I send them to print. And that just checks to make sure that the files are watertight. There's no holes in the file that will screw up when you send it to the printer. You can also use that program to divide a model up into different pieces, which isn't technically slicing the file. It's like, there's another name for that, where you are basically, like, you need to make it fit on the printer bed is what I mean. So you're dividing it down into smaller pieces that are printable. NetFab can do that, really good job of that. And then there's, what is the program I use for slicing? I've been wanting to try, what is it called? Simplify 3D. I hear it's really, really good for slicing. Now, I've never used it, but it's got fantastic reviews just about everywhere. I use this free program called, I think it's called Repeater. I'm probably saying that wrong. Repeater, it's a slicing software. I'll put a link to it below. I'm blanking on it right now. I'm probably mispronouncing the name, but that works fine. That's what I've used for all of my prints since I got my printer at home. If you send a print off to, Shapeways or something, you don't need to have it sliced. They do all that stuff in-house. You just send them the model and they handle all of that hard work basically. So that is that section. Printer, if I had problems with my printer, that was the other question. Sorry, I'm driving through like a zone where there's a bunch of kids walking around and stop signs and stuff, so I gotta be careful. Did I have problems setting up my printer? Yes, I had some problems setting up my printer. They weren't so bad that I wouldn't do it again. I would totally buy another printer. I would buy the same printer again. That's how not bad they were. When I got my printer, it came with some of the wrong metal rods. It looks like they gave me rods to a different printer setup. So I had some of the X and Y axis had the wrong length rods. They were too short. Now, the printer company was really good, and they immediately shipped me out another batch of rods for my printer, but they're in China, so it's gonna take like 2 weeks to get them. So I just ran up to this metal supply place. It's like 8 minutes from my house, and bought brand new rods. I think I paid $8, and they bought some of these things, and it was super easy to do. And just cut them to the right length. And then that was fixed. And then I got my printer built and I was all excited, plugged it in, and it didn't turn on. And that sucked. That was a really lame moment. And I spent about 3 days trying to sort out what was wrong with that. And my friend who had the same printer, he said, just plug it into the USB port and see if your display comes on, because the display and the motherboard are hooked together, and they can run off the USB power, and that way you can determine whether it's your power supply or USB, because I was trying to figure all this stuff out. So we plugged in the USB, and the display lit up. So all my functions now worked. I just didn't have any power for the extruders and the stepper motors and the heated bed. All that stuff still didn't have power. So that took me, again, a few days to figure out what was wrong. I ended up finding a schematic of my motherboard, and it turned out that my power supply, the wires that went from my power supply to my motherboard, had been switched at the plug that they supplied me. So it was not my fault. I had checked my wiring like 24 times, looking to see if anything was wrong. Everything on my end looked correct, checked over and over and over. And the plug wires had been switched. So the positive and negative were backwards. So once I found that, I went over and reversed them on the power supply backwards from what they were supposed to be, and then everything worked, and it's worked ever since. I think the only other problem I had was about a week and a half into having my printer. A week and a half into getting my printer, I had a bearing go out. And on the X-axis, one of the little bearings that runs it back and forth on the belt started to get weird, and it broke. And I think I just had the belt cinched down too tight, and that's why. So anyway, I just got a message on my phone. I'm actually at the place where I'm supposed to go, and the guy is finishing a time lapse right now, so I don't know if I can go in. So I can stay here with the video. Sorry, it's very distracting. So yeah, the bearing broke. I fixed it. That was almost a year ago. It's been fine ever since. And I've run my printer a ton. If you see my videos, you can see that there is, if you see my videos, you can see that there's a big stack of printer filament spools behind me. That's just like a fraction of the ones I've printed. I printed through rolls and rolls and rolls of filament, and almost all of them work fine. If you see my last videos, that printer stuff I'm working with now, that's total crap, is the second roll that's given me some trouble. I had a problem with one roll of ABS. It seemed like it was giving me some similar issues, but the rest has been fine. Anyway, so what was the other questions? Tips? I'm probably missing something here, guys. I'm sorry. Any tips on printing? Learn modeling and work out orientations of your objects. So when you go to place an object on your printer, if you're doing it at home, with Shapeways, you don't have to worry about this. Like I said before, you can print stuff all kinds of weird shapes, and it doesn't matter because you don't need support material. But when you're doing it on your own, you're gonna have to have support materials. So you want to be sure that you can figure out the optimal way to orient the object, where you don't have to use a ton of support material, but it's also balanced in a way where the model doesn't fall over. It's just little tricks like that are really, really handy. And practice troubleshooting what your filament's doing, because again, with my last video, you see that those models are getting all crazy. I put a lot of time into like figuring out what's causing what issue. So when I see something wrong and trying to, you know, sort out why the prints are coming out strange, or if they're coming out bubbly, or the corners are a little weird, like if it's too hot or it's not hot enough, or the little things. And it's not hard to adjust those things, and I think I made a video about that. Like, just don't be scared to test it. Like, if you're printing stuff, it's coming out pretty good, but you think it could be better, just adjust it and see. It doesn't, nobody's gonna die. It's gonna be fine. And did I cover everything? I don't know. Anyway, I'm here. I should probably go inside and get to work so I don't have to be here till like 1 in the morning. But anyway, thanks for stopping by. Sorry it's a little rambly, but that was my drive. So if you guys have more questions, let me know and I'll answer them down below. And otherwise, I will be back soon. I ordered some more stuff in the mail today. I hope it came in. I might make another video tonight and we'll talk about it when I get home at 1 in the morning, something like that. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. See you guys soon.